the biggest archaeological site in Europe, the scenario for an ancient massacre of epic proportions. A city buried under tons of dust and sand turned into ruins. Those ruins are an epitaph for the people who lived there and who were slaughtered there over 2000 years ago. And it was brought to light through a recent excavation which is still not yet finished. If you like videos about the ancient world, history, ancient life, and myths, as well as new archaeological discoveries, subscribe to our channel. It took the archaeologists 15 years to uncover the largest archaeological site in Europe. They managed to identify 2,500 houses in the ancient city of Selinunte. The city planning and organization is very similar to a modern city. They had dedicated residential, commercial and industrial zones. The street blocks used a grid system. On the suburbs of the city, they discovered a whole district which was dedicated to manufacturing pottery. The Selinunte's potters were able to make around 300,000 ceramic artifacts per year. They separated the sector from the rest of the city to prevent the smells, noise and smoke coming from the manufacturing process of the pottery. This way the residents were not bothered and they could carry on their daily lives. But also for safety reasons, because the pottery fabrication process was prone to generate accidental fires. The archaeologists found a lot of equipment used to making pottery and even the pigments used to paint in the pots. Also were found pottery ovens, including big and rounded ones used for making roof tiles, ceramic coffins and ceramic containers for food transportation such as wheat and olive oil. The other small ceramic ovens were used for making tableware and small statues of gods and goddesses. The statues were likely used in a temple which was also uncovered and probably was used by the potters to pray to their gods. Gods like the working class goddess Athena Ergane and also Artemis, Demeter and to Zeus himself. Selinunte is the only classical Greek city where the archaeologists have succeeded in understanding completely an ancient industrial zone. This discovery allowed them to fully analyze the complex relation between a city's population and its economy. What is still to be researched is a harbor where they want to use geophysics techniques to try to find the foundations of a warehouse that once stood around it. Shops and houses are found near the city's marketplace. This implies that the harbor attracted ships from all over the Mediterranean. In the 6th century BC, the Greeks had left their dark ages. During this time, the Greek population was booming, and by navigating and trading on the Mediterranean, the Greeks became a fairly rich people. But this was not reality for all classes, and the Greek homeland is a very mountainous place, and with very little farmland available, which generate scarcity of natural resources. All this combined with the troubled political situation of several Greek cities created the perfect scenario for a number of Greek people to look for better life somewhere else, and in many cases far from the Greek homeland. And in a very similar way how the Europeans colonized the Americas in the future, the Greeks started to create new cities all over the Mediterranean. And that's why a small group of colonists decided to leave the port of Megara in 650 BC. They went to an island, a time without name, almost without people, in the middle of the Mediterranean to found their new city. When they arrived to the island, they found something they weren't expecting. They found tons and tons of wild celery growing on the fields, so much that when they would name their city, they named based on the only thing they could think: celery. In Greek, Selinunte. The city of the celery adopts celery in everything. They put in their coins and the name of their people. Located in which is nowadays the island of Sicily in Italy, the colony became a prosperous trading port where ships from all across the ancient world sailed into its harbor. The city grew to 30,000 residents, who were trading with Egypt, the Anatolian peoples, in which is nowadays Turkey, with the Greek homeland and other Greek colonies in Europe. And by gaining wealth and prosperity over trading, the citizens built great temples to thank their gods. Sadly, the bright days were about to come to an end. To understand what led to the massacre, we first need to understand the dynamic of the Greek city-states. The Greek cities didn't have any central government and thus were in constant states of cooperation and war among themselves. An example of this is the case of Sparta and Athens. The cities were collaborating while fighting a bigger threat and fighting each other in a more, between quotes, peaceful time. Selinunte also had its own arch-enemy, a city called Segesta. The Segestans were an Elmaean people, native to Sicily, who had adopted the Greek way of life and claimed to be descendants of the Trojans. The competition between Selinunte and Segesta was intense, but always ending in a stalemate, until in a war between Athens and Sparta in 416 BC, Segesta took the side of Athens and Selinunte took the side of Sparta. But the Athenians failed to give support to Segesta, and Selinunte got support of the city-state of Syracuse, an ally of Sparta. This turned the balance of the war in favor of Selinunte, as the Segestans were basically left to their own luck. But against all the odds, the Segestans managed to hold Selinunte and Syracuse incursions on their land. And even, despite of their perseverance, ultimately Athens lost this war, and by treaty had to surrender part of the territory of Segesta to Selinunte. The Segestans became furious and decided to seek help outside of the Greek world, and they asked help for the Carthaginians, a Phoenician people which will be of major importance for the world history in the future. The Carthaginians come from what is nowadays the country of Tunisia. Initially, the Carthaginians sent a small force that together with the Segestans managed to defeat the Selinuntes in battle. This easy victory made the Carthaginians thirsty for more victories, and in 409 BC they sent an army that by the lowest ancient estimation had around 100,000 men. When the army landed in Sicily, they marched directly to Selinunte. The city inhabitants were not expecting such a force and were totally unprepared to resist it. The city fortifications were in many places in a bad shape. Also, the armed forces promised by Syracuse and other allies were not ready and did not arrive on time. The scenario was prepared for a massacre of epic proportions. And on this time, it seems that the gods weren't on the side of Selinunte. The citizens of Selinunte saw their doom approaching from distance. Rows and rows of marching Carthaginian soldiers who stretched to the horizon. But most decided to stay on their lands and fight the invaders. But the Carthaginian army broke the city defenses and slaughtered over 16,000 soldiers and regular citizens. Approximately 5,000 men and thousands of women and children were taken as slaves. There was signs of people leaving their everyday tasks unfinished as they were rushing to escape from the attackers. After the chaos, the once thriving city became a ghost town, and all happened in one day. The invaders tried to repopulate the city, but ultimately they just abandoned the place. The island suffered many earthquakes, and as a result, it was turned into ruins which were gradually covered by the sand and dust over the centuries. Just like what happened in the city of Pompeii, when a volcanic eruption wiped out the entire population in a day and covered the city in volcanic debris and ashes. The city of Selinunte became completely destroyed in less than a day by the Carthaginian troops who butchered 16,000 people. The tragic end of the city brought a lot of attention to this discovery. However, it's not the only reason why this archaeological site is so unique. It's also unique because it's a well-preserved glimpse of the life of the ancient Greek people. It tells us how the people lived, thrived, and died 2,000 years ago, and left us with marvelous monuments to admire. If you enjoy videos about history and new discoveries, like and subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell icon to stay updated on our future videos. If you found this video interesting, feel free to share on Facebook, Reddit and other social media to help this channel grow. Tibi gratias ago pro vigilabo.